You have the collegium, which consists of two judges of the High Court and three judges of the Supreme Court, except for appointments of judges in the Supreme Court directly. You have five judge collegium. But I would like to look at the collegium system, that is the entire system, starting from the recommendations made by the High Court collegium right up to the time when the warrant of appointment is issued by the President of India. So it's not really only the collegium, but transparency and accountability in the entire system of appointment of judges. Now, we start with the recommendations that are made by the High Court. My experience has been that the moment the letter leaves the office of the Chief Justice of the High Court, everybody in the bar knows who are the persons who have been recommended. Sometimes it's even before the letter leaves the Secretariat, but by and large, everybody knows. In fact, just about a couple of months ago, maybe 1 or 2 months ago, I got a call from a reporter saying that she had been able to access the names of 5 or 6 judges who had been recommended by one of the high courts, and whether it was proper for her to write an article revealing those names. So I told her that the fact that she comes to know about it, everybody in the bar in any case knows about it, but the fact that she as an outsider came to know about it is an indication that everybody in UP perhaps knows who the persons are. So there is really no secrecy why those names should be kept unknown to others. Yes, Justice Shah did mention that there will be all kinds of petitions. People will be making representations and all that, but that will happen in any case. Even after the names are officially known, representations are made. So maybe it's a good filtering process if the representations are made, objections are raised, so that there is enough material. There's participation from the bar, there's participation from others uh, about things which the collegium may not have known, and which can always be considered by the collegium or reconsidered by the collegium. That's one stage. The second stage is inputs that are given by the state government, that is the intelligence agencies in the state government. Now, frankly, when I was in the collegium in the Supreme Court, I did not come across any input that has been given by the state intelligence agencies. I don't know why, but I'm sure that the state intelligence agencies also give inputs, or maybe the central intelligence agency working in the states. I say that because quite some time ago, there was a person who was recommended from the Delhi High Court for being appointed as a judge, and I'm sure many of you have heard of that example. He was a complete teetotaler. Because he was a teetotaler, he got the nickname of Boozer, right? So the intelligence agency said he's a boozer, and the collegium looked at it and said, "Oh, this guy is a boozer, so we can't recommend him," and that was the end of it. Subsequently, of course, he became a judge, but there was this input from the state, whether it was the state intelligence agency or the central intelligence agency, I don't know. Then you have inputs given by the central intelligence agency, that is the intelligence bureau. And recently, we have seen in the recommendations that were made by the Supreme Court Collegium, reiterations actually, where the information given by the Intelligence Bureau was actually culled out and mentioned in the recommendation made by the Supreme Court, or in the statement given by the Supreme Court. So really, there is this secrecy that is supposed to be surrounding all this, but frankly, I don't see what is the reason for that secrecy. Because, like I said, you might get wrong information from the intelligence agency, and I'm sure Vaigai will be able to tell us um, about the recent appointment in the Madras High Court, whether the Central Intelligence Agency actually gave information which Justice A.P. Shah was talking about with regard to the appointment of one of the persons who was recommended. So the intelligence agencies actually play a very crucial role. It may not be decisive. It's of course for the collegium to decide how much weightage to give to the information, and also to verify the correctness of the information. But the importance of the intelligence agencies is that they will tell the collegium something, they will tell the central government something, and hopefully the central government will pass on that information to the collegium. They may withhold information from the central government. Maybe the central government knows about it, but that information may be withheld from the Supreme Court collegium, so that an erroneous decision is taken by the Supreme Court collegium. So the importance of the inputs given by the intelligence agencies, whether they're state intelligence or whether they're central intelligence, is really necessary. And frankly, I see no reason why there should be opacity in that. We should know what has been said. Otherwise, you may have a situation where some information that is available with the agency is not disclosed to the Supreme Court collegium. That's even far, far more dangerous than disclosing information. I'm aware that the law minister has said, information given by the intelligence agencies is being leaked out or is being stated by the Supreme Court collegium in their statement, and this is not proper. The idea really is that field officers should not be identified, but what they say is something which is important. It is an input on which the governments work. It's an input on which I don't see why the collegium should not work. So disclosing that kind of information and making it open to the public, I see frankly nothing wrong in that. That's one aspect of transparency which the present collegium has taken a very progressive step, and I hope it continues despite what the law minister has to say. Now, with all this information, namely the recommendation of the High Court Collegium, the inputs given by the State Intelligence Agency, the inputs given by the Central Intelligence Agency, the central government sends the file to the Supreme Court. The central government, I think, should, perhaps it does not, but it should give a detailed information about whatever has been collected, whatever is the material that has been collected from the intelligence agencies and from the High Court, and from whatever other sources that the central government may have, so that the collegium and the Supreme Court can take an informed decision. Now, why is this important? This is important because the entire material is given to the Supreme Court Collegium, and the Supreme Court Collegium acts on the basis of that material, as Chief Justice Lalit told us. Now, when the entire material is before the Supreme Court Collegium, the question of the uh, uh, the uh, the decision being sent by the collegium to the government, and the government sending it back to the collegium may not arise because all the material is already there. There might be some material that may have come in the interregnum. Okay, that can perhaps be forwarded to the collegium. But strictly speaking, if the entire material is placed before the Supreme Court collegium, there is no reason for the central government to send it back to the collegium for reconsideration. But anyway, I don't want to get into that. There could be, I'm prepared to give the benefit of doubt to the central government and say that, well, sometimes something is overlooked. But if you look at it, strictly speaking, there is no reason for sending the file back to the Supreme Court Collegium and having the Supreme Court Collegium maybe either accept the views of the central government or to reject it and reiterate it. The names. You've had a situation again recently pertaining to the Madras High Court, where the central government just sent the file back to the collegium. No reasons, nothing, no further input, absolutely nothing. They just sent it back to the collegium and said that, oh, we are sending it back to you. Why? Because we have the power to do it, obviously. And the Supreme Court has noted in the statement that no reason has been given, and we reiterate the name. So, really, this is an aspect of transparency that we need to look at that the entire material should be made available to the Supreme Court Collegium so that it can take an informed decision. I see no harm in terms of transparency if the inputs that are given by the intelligence agencies are made public, as has been done by the Supreme Court. The second aspect of this session is the accountability problem. That is, I think, where the problem actually lies. Who is accountable? Yes, the Supreme Court has made some terrible decisions in the sense that persons who should have been recommended have not been recommended for appointment. Persons who should not have been recommended have been recommended for appointment and have actually, been sworn in as judges. The accountability aspect of the collegium, I'm not doubting that at all, and I think in that sense the collegium should be answerable to the public. That why have they rejected somebody and why have they accepted somebody, who does not deserve to be there. But the important thing is the accountability of the government. Is the government accountable? In my view, the government so far has not been accountable. One is on the issue of segregation. Mr. Sonti mentioned about segregation, but a long time back, Chief Justice R.M. Lodha had mentioned about segregation. When three recommendations were made for appointment to the Supreme Court, the government segregated the file, kept the file of one of them aside, and appointed the other two. Chief Justice Lodha said that, listen, it's one recommendation. It's not three files that we are sending. We are making one recommendation. You either accept the recommendation in full or you send it back to us for reconsideration. But you can't segregate names. Now, once you segregate names, it has a huge effect in terms of seniority. And again, you don't know why the segregation has happened. What is the reason? Why was Mr. Sondi's file segregated and the others processed? We don't know. But the government is not accountable for that. That is one aspect. The second aspect is sitting over the files. The government just, there have been instances of some persons whose, recommendation has been pending for 3 years, and I think one of them for about 4 years. Why is that? We don't know. Nobody knows, and the government is not accountable. So in between, you have the instance of Mr. Saurabh Kripal, which has been coming in the papers for quite some time. While this to and fro has been going on, there are 18 people who have become senior to him. Okay, why? Because the government is just sitting over the file. So the government, I think, also should be accountable. The third thing is, why is it that in the case of some recommendations, there's a reiteration, there's a reconsideration made, and in the case of others, it just goes through. We saw in the case of Madras High Court, no reasons given. But because I have the power to send it back to you, I'll send it back to you. In that manner, you delay the appointment. And they can keep doing that, and the Supreme Court will keep saying that, no reasons have been given. We reiterate the recommendation. But what happens in the meanwhile? That person is just kept hanging. It can happen for a year, it can happen for 2 years. Like I said, it has happened for 3 years, it has happened for 4 years. It's not only one reiteration, but there have been 2 reiterations, and in 1 or 2 cases, there have been 3 reiterations. Why? So, transparency is absolutely necessary, undoubtedly. Accountability of the government is necessary. Why is the government doing this? I think the collegium should know about it, and the collegium should tell the people what is happening. The idea of the secretariat is good. The idea of that will just help in the appointment process. I don't know to what extent it will help in the accountability process. But I think the government, the collegium should take it up and say that, you please explain to us. There's a public interest litigation pending, either through the public interest litigation or through the collegium system. Tell us, why are you doing this? You are accountable to us. You are accountable to the judiciary. You are accountable to the people of the country. Tell us, why are you doing this? Finally, my last point, um, I think the time has come to open up the files. Okay, recommendations that were made in 1990s, recommendations that were made in the first half of the 2000 and the first decade. Why not open up those files? Is there something wrong if those files are opened up, either from the both from the Supreme Court side as well as the government side, so that we know that persons like the Chief Justice's sister who was appointed, why was she appointed? What is the national secret, behind keeping those files in a closet? Why not open them up? Have some sort of a system where maybe after 5 years or after 10 years or after the judge retires, some period during which the file may be kept closed, but certainly after that it should be opened up for public view and for research, so that we know that where things are going wrong and where things are going right. That's all that I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justice Lokur. I think you have very succinctly opened up the discussion, and I want to highlight two things specifically in terms of accountability. One is the accountability of intelligence agencies. I think the fact of transparency allows us also to hold these agencies to account and the manner in which they are functioning. The second point that I sort of wanted to highlight is that the holding the government accountable. Transparency is not just about holding the judiciary and saying why do you do this, why do you do this, but allows us to ask questions of the government also. Why did you do this? Why did you not do that? And finally, I think as a researcher, I particularly appreciate this point, which is the historical relevance of this material. We should no longer continue to treat the collegium papers as a high-level state secret. I think it's in the public's interest to know, not just the researchers. Thank you so much, Justice Lokur. Now I'd like to call upon Justice Deepak Gupta, who's been a judge of the Supreme Court and who has been the Chief Justice of the Tripura and the Chhattisgarh High Court, and somebody who has had a lot to say about this matter and somebody who has made very important interventions in the public domain. Justice.